Marcus Chen stared at the acceptance letter for the third time that morning, still unable to believe it was real. The Galactic Exchange Program had selected him, a simple engineering student from Earth, to spend a full academic cycle at Kepler Station, the most prestigious university in known space. The transport shuttle's engines hummed as it approached the massive station orbiting the gas giant Nereus. Through the viewport, Marcus watched the structure grow larger, its spiral arms stretching for kilometers in each direction. Ships from dozens of different species docked at various ports, their designs as varied as their creators. "First time off-world?" asked the pilot, a friendly Altarian whose blue-tinted skin shimmered under the cabin lights. "First time off my home continent, actually," Marcus admitted, feeling somewhat embarrassed. The pilot chuckled, a sound like wind chimes. "Don't worry. Kepler Station is the perfect place to start. Very welcoming to new species." The docking process took another hour, during which Marcus reviewed his housing assignment. He'd been paired with a roommate from the Zephyrian Collective, species designation ZC-7741. The file contained basic information. His roommate's name was Keflar, pronounced Keflar with emphasis on the first syllable. The species profile mentioned they were bipedal, roughly human-sized, and originated from a high-gravity world with extended daylight cycles. When Marcus finally reached his assigned quarters in the residential sector, he found the door already open. Inside, the living space was larger than he'd expected, with two separate sleeping areas connected by a common room. The furniture could adjust to accommodate different body types, and the walls displayed a gentle, shifting pattern of lights that supposedly promoted mental well-being across multiple species. "You must be Marcus Chun from Earth," came a voice from the far sleeping area. Marcus turned to see his roommate emerging. Keflar stood about 2 meters tall with an athletic build. His skin had a subtle golden hue, and his features were angular but not unpleasant. What struck Marcus most were his eyes, large, dark, and incredibly expressive. "That's me. Nice to meet you, Keflar. Please, just Kef." That suffix is only used in formal situations. He extended what Marcus assumed was a hand, longer fingers than human, but the gesture was clearly the same. They shook, and Marcus noted Kef's grip was firm but careful, as if he was being mindful of his strength. "I've prepared some information about human customs and needs," Kef said, gesturing to a datapad on the central table. "I hope you don't mind, but I researched your species extensively. I wanted to make sure our cohabitation would be comfortable." Marcus was touched by the thoughtfulness. "That's really considerate. I did some reading about Zephyrians too, though I'm sure there's a lot the databases don't cover." Kef's expression brightened, literally. Marcus noticed the golden tint of his skin seemed to intensify slightly when he was pleased. "Excellent. Cultural exchange is one of the primary benefits of the program." Kef moved to what appeared to be a food preparation area. "Are you hungry? I've learned to prepare several dishes that should be compatible with human digestive systems." Over the next few hours, Marcus found himself genuinely impressed with his roommate. Kef was intelligent, curious, and surprisingly funny. He asked thoughtful questions about Earth culture and shared fascinating details about his homeworld, Zephyr Prime, where the days lasted nearly 40 Earth hours and the gravity was 30% stronger. "The hardest adjustment here," Kef explained as they ate, "is the artificial day-night cycle. On Zephyr Prime, we have much longer periods of activity followed by extended rest phases." "How long do you usually sleep?" Marcus asked. Kef paused, his skin flickering between golden and a slightly darker bronze. "That's somewhat complicated to explain. Zephyrian rest patterns are quite different from human ones." Something in his tone suggested there was more to it, but Marcus didn't want to pry on their first day together. The next morning, Marcus woke to find Kef already gone. A note on the table indicated he'd left early for his first class. Marcus made his way to orientation, where he joined several hundred other exchange students from across the galaxy. The diversity was overwhelming. There were crystalline beings from the Andromedans, gaseous entities contained in environmental suits from the Nebula Collective, and dozens of other species Marcus couldn't begin to identify. What struck him most was how normal it all felt, different, yes, but not alien in the threatening way he'd expected. During lunch, he sat with a group that included Vera, a fellow human from the European Federation, and several other carbon-based life forms. The conversation inevitably turned to roommate experiences. "Mine doesn't speak," said a student whose species Marcus didn't recognize. "Communication is entirely through pheromone release. It's actually quite relaxing." "I'm rooming with a hive mind collective," Vera added. "There are 7 of them, but they all share the same consciousness. It's like having one very large roommate who's always talking to themselves." "What about you, Marcus?" asked another student. "Zephyrian. He seems great so far. Very considerate, good sense of humor. Though he's been a bit mysterious about some cultural differences." "Oh, Zephyrians," said Vera knowingly. "I read about them in xenobiology. They have some unique social structures. Very communal species." Marcus filed that information away, wondering what exactly communal meant in this context. When he returned to their quarters that evening, he found Keth in the common area, but he wasn't alone. Another Zephyrian sat beside him, this one slightly shorter with similar golden skin but distinctly different facial features. "Marcus." Keth stood quickly, his skin brightening. "I'd like you to meet Zareth. She's a friend from my advanced theoretical physics class." Zareth rose and offered her hand in the human custom. "Keth has told me much about his human roommate." "It's a pleasure." Marcus shook her hand, noting that her grip was similar to Keth's, strong but carefully controlled. "Nice to meet you too. Are you in the exchange program as well?" "No, I'm a permanent resident. My family relocated here when I was young." She glanced at Keth with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "I was actually hoping to stay for dinner, if that's acceptable to you." "Of course," Marcus replied. "The more the merrier." As the 3 of them prepared and shared a meal, Marcus observed the easy familiarity between the 2 Zephyrians. They occasionally touched a hand on a shoulder, a brief brush of fingers, in ways that seemed casual but intimate. Their conversation included references to shared experiences and mutual friends that spoke of a long relationship. After dinner, Zareth excused herself to return to her own quarters. As she prepared to leave, she embraced Keth in a way that lasted several seconds longer than Marcus would have expected for casual friends. "Sleep well," she told him, and there was something in her tone that made Marcus look up from the datapad he'd been reviewing. "You too," Keth replied softly. After she left, Keth seemed thoughtful. He moved around the common area, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting and checking systems that were already functioning perfectly. "She seems nice," Marcus offered. "Zareth is important to me," Keth said carefully. "We've been close for many cycles." "Like a girlfriend?" Marcus asked, then immediately felt awkward. "Sorry, I don't know if that's an appropriate concept for your species." Keth's skin shifted to a deeper bronze color. "Not exactly like human romantic partnerships, no. Zephyrian relationships are more complex." Marcus sensed he was approaching territory that made his roommate uncomfortable, so he changed the subject. They spent the rest of the evening discussing their upcoming classes and sharing stories about their respective homeworlds. As they prepared to retire for the night, Keth hesitated at the entrance to his sleeping area. "Marcus, tomorrow I should explain something important about Zephyrian customs. It relates to our living arrangement here." "Sure," Marcus replied. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, it's just." Keth paused, his skin flickering between gold and bronze. "Where I come from, certain behaviors that might seem unusual to humans are completely ordinary for my people. I want to make sure you understand, so there are no misunderstandings." Marcus nodded. "I appreciate you thinking ahead. We can talk about it tomorrow." Keth smiled, his skin returning to its normal golden hue. "Good. Sleep well, Marcus." As Marcus settled into his own sleeping area, he found himself curious about what Keth needed to explain. In his research about Zephyrians, he'd learned they were highly social beings with strong community bonds, but the specifics of their social structure had been somewhat vague in the academic papers he'd found. Whatever it was, he was confident they could work it out. Keth had proven to be thoughtful and communicative, and Marcus was determined to make their cultural exchange a success. He drifted off to sleep, excited about the adventures that lay ahead at Kepler Station. The next morning brought new classes, new experiences, and the promise of a conversation that would change everything Marcus thought he knew about galactic social norms. Marcus spent the morning attending his first real classes at Kepler Station. Advanced engineering principles was taught by a professor whose species looked like a cross between a mantis and a tree, while interstellar navigation featured a holographic instructor who existed as pure information. The diversity of teaching methods and perspectives was exhilarating, but, throughout the day, he found himself wondering about Keth's promised explanation. When he returned to their quarters, Keth was waiting with what appeared to be tea and some sort of pastry that smelled amazing. "I thought we could have refreshments while we talk," Keth said, his skin displaying that bronze tint Marcus was beginning to associate with nervousness. They sat across from each other in the common area. The pastry turned out to be something like a cinnamon roll, but, with flavors Marcus couldn't identify, not unpleasant, just completely new. "So," Marcus began gently, "what did you want to explain?" Keth took what Marcus assumed was a deep breath, though Zephyrian breathing patterns were subtly different from humans. It concerned sleep patterns and social bonding. As I mentioned, Zephyrian rest cycles are much longer than human ones, typically 14 to 16 hours of activity followed by 8 to 10 hours of rest. Marcus nodded. That seemed manageable, if unusual. However, Keth continued, the concept of sleeping alone is foreign to us. On Zephyr Prime, we sleep in community groups. Usually family units, but sometimes friend groups or academic cohorts. The practice serves multiple purposes: safety, thermal regulation, emotional bonding, and dream sharing. Dream sharing? Marcus asked. Keth's skin brightened slightly. During sleep, Zephyrians often experience shared consciousness states. Not full telepathy, but a sort of emotional and sensory connection with those sleeping nearby. It's deeply meaningful to our psychological well-being. Marcus began to understand why this might be complicated in their current living situation. "And you can't do this alone?" "I can sleep alone when necessary, but it's difficult. Like asking a human to hold their breath. Possible for short periods, but not sustainable for mental health." Keth's expression became almost pleading. "I've been managing for the past week since I arrived, but I'm beginning to experience what you might call insomnia and anxiety." "What usually helps?" Marcus asked. "Having someone nearby during rest periods. They don't need to participate in dream sharing, that's a specifically Zephyrian trait, but the presence of another consciousness provides comfort and stability." Marcus considered this. "Are you asking if it would be okay for Zareth to stay overnight sometimes?" Keth's skin shifted to an even deeper bronze. "Actually, I was hoping, that is, if you're comfortable with it, you might be willing to share sleep space occasionally. Human presence would be sufficient for my needs, and it might be an interesting cultural exchange experience." Marcus blinked. "You want us to sleep in the same room?" "Not necessarily the same bed," Keth clarified quickly. "Though that would be most effective. But even sleeping in the same area would help significantly. I understand this might violate human social customs around personal space and intimacy." Marcus thought about it. In human culture, sharing a bed was generally associated with romantic relationships or close family. But this was clearly different, a physiological and psychological need rather than anything romantic. "It wouldn't be weird?" Marcus asked. "Not from a Zephyrian perspective," Keth assured him. "We don't associate sleep sharing with romantic bonding the way humans do. It's more like communal breathing or shared meals. A basic social function." "What about Zareth?" "I got the impression you two were close." Keth's skin flickered between several shades. "We are close. She's what you might call a bondmate, not romantic in the human sense, but a deep emotional connection. We've shared sleep space for several cycles. But her living situation doesn't permit overnight guests, and my room here is larger." Marcus found himself oddly touched by the trust Keth was placing in him. This was clearly something important and vulnerable for his roommate. If it helps you rest properly, I'm willing to try it, Marcus said. Though I should warn you, humans sometimes snore or move around in their sleep. Kath's entire body seemed to brighten. Really? You're comfortable with this? Well, let's start with sleeping in the same room and see how it goes, Marcus suggested practically. We can adjust from there. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Marcus. This means more to me than you might realize. That evening, they rearranged the furniture in Kath's sleeping area to accommodate Marcus's bed. The room was large enough that they could maintain some personal space while still being close enough for Kath's needs. As they prepared for sleep, Marcus felt oddly nervous. This wasn't something he'd ever imagined doing with an alien roommate, but, then, again, nothing about his life lately had been something he'd imagined. Is there anything I should know about Zephyrian's sleep behavior? Marcus asked as he settled into his relocated bed. I tend to be very still once I enter deep sleep, Kath replied from his own bed about 2 meters away. And, my skin might continue to change colors based on dream content, but that shouldn't be disruptive. Dream content affects your appearance? Emotions during dreams can cause color shifts. It's one way we monitor each other's rest quality. Kath paused. Would it bother you if I occasionally spoke during sleep? Sometimes we verbalize shared experiences. As long as you don't expect me to answer, Marcus said with a smile. Kath laughed, the sound warm in the dim room. I'll try to keep the conversations one-sided. Marcus had expected to lie awake for hours, too aware of his roommate's presence to relax. Instead, he found the gentle sound of Kath's breathing and the soft color shifts playing across his skin surprisingly soothing. He drifted off more easily than he had since arriving at the station. He woke once during the night to find Kath's skin glowing a soft, warm gold, and heard him murmuring quietly in what must have been his native language. The words were melodic, almost like singing, and Marcus found himself lulled back to sleep by the sound. In the morning, Kath seemed transformed. His skin was brighter, his movements more energetic, and his whole demeanor more relaxed. That was the best sleep I've had since leaving home, he told Marcus over breakfast. Thank you. You're welcome. It wasn't as strange as I thought it would be. Marcus hesitated. You were talking in your sleep. It sounded like singing. Kath's skin shifted to a pleased gold. Dream songs. We often process experiences and emotions through melodic expression during sleep. It's considered a sign of good rest quality. It was actually quite beautiful. Their new arrangement quickly became routine. Marcus discovered that having a roommate nearby actually helped his own sleep quality. There was something comforting about not being alone in the vast space station. Kath's presence was peaceful rather than intrusive, and Marcus began to appreciate the gentle light show of color changes that indicated his roommate's dream states. After a week of shared sleep space, Zareth visited again. This time, when the three of them had dinner, she seemed more relaxed around Marcus. Kath tells me you've been helping with his rest cycles, she said. That's very kind of you. It's working out well for both of us, actually, Marcus replied. I sleep better too. Zareth exchanged a look with Kath. Would you be comfortable if I occasionally joined the sleep sharing? I miss the connection with Kath, and three-way community rest is more traditional for our species. Marcus considered this. The room was large enough, and he'd grown comfortable with the arrangement. As long as we're all just sleeping, I don't see why not. Kath's skin blazed with happiness. This would mean a great deal to both of us. That night, the three of them arranged their beds in a triangle formation. Marcus learned that Zareth was a more active sleeper than Kath, shifting positions frequently and occasionally reaching out to touch one of her sleeping companions. The first time her hand brushed his arm in sleep, Marcus started awake, but Kath's soft explanation, comfort-seeking, perfectly normal, helped him relax. By the second week, Marcus had adapted completely to the arrangement. He even found himself looking forward to the peaceful, communal atmosphere of their shared rest periods. The gentle interplay of Kath and Zareth's color changes created a soothing light show, and their occasional sleep songs provided a melodic backdrop to his dreams. It wasn't until other human students began commenting that Marcus realized how unusual their situation might appear to his own species. You're sleeping with two aliens? Vera asked incredulously during lunch. At the same time? It's not like that, Marcus protested. It's a cultural accommodation. They have different social needs around sleep. But, you're all in the same room? In beds? Yes, but we're just sleeping. It's completely platonic. Vera shook her head. The other humans are talking about it. Some think it's weird, others think it's progressive. Marcus felt a flash of irritation. What we do in our own quarters is nobody else's business. But, the conversation made him realize that he should probably explain the situation to other humans before rumors got out of hand. The last thing he wanted was for his accommodation to reflect poorly on the exchange program. That evening, he brought up the concern with Kath and Zareth. Other humans are confused by our arrangement, he explained. They don't understand the cultural context. Kath's skin darkened with worry. Are we causing problems for you? We could return to previous arrangements if necessary. No, Marcus said quickly. I don't want that. I'm just wondering if we should be more open about explaining the cultural differences to others. Zareth leaned forward. Would it help if we demonstrated the practice to other students? Many species have communal sleep customs. Humans might simply be unfamiliar with the concept. Maybe, Marcus mused. Or maybe we just need to be more confident about explaining it when people ask. As if summoned by their conversation, the door chimed with a visitor request. Marcus opened it to find 3 human students from his engineering program, including Vera. We hope we're not interrupting, Vera said, though her curious gaze was already taking in the visible sleeping arrangements. We wanted to invite you to a human-only social gathering tomorrow night. Before Marcus could respond, Kath emerged from the food preparation area. Good evening, he said pleasantly. I'm Kath Lar, Marcus's roommate. Zareth appeared a moment later, and Marcus watched the other humans' expressions shift as they tried to process the domestic scene. We were just discussing cultural exchange practices, Marcus said. Would you like to come in and learn about Zephyrian social customs? What followed was an impromptu cultural education session that would prove to be more significant than any of them realized. The impromptu cultural exchange session lasted nearly 3 hours. Kath and Zareth patiently explained Zephyrian social structures, community bonding practices, and the psychological importance of shared sleep space. The visiting humans asked increasingly thoughtful questions, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine curiosity. So it's more like a necessary social function than anything romantic, asked Tom, one of Marcus's classmates. Exactly, Zareth confirmed. Think of it like humans needing social interaction to maintain mental health. Isolated sleep is psychologically harmful to our species over extended periods. But, you don't actually share consciousness? Vera inquired. During dream states, we experience emotional resonance and, sometimes shared sensory impressions, Kath explained. But, we maintain individual identity and privacy. It's communion, not merger. As the evening progressed, Marcus watched his fellow humans' perspectives shift. What had initially seemed strange or inappropriate began to make sense within its cultural context. More importantly, he saw Kath and Zareth relax as they were met with respectful curiosity rather than judgment. This is actually fascinating from an anthropological perspective, said Sarah, a student studying xenocultural relations. Have you documented these interactions? The cross-species adaptation process could be valuable research. We hadn't considered formal documentation, Marcus admitted. We've just been focusing on making it work. You should, Sarah encouraged. This kind of successful cultural accommodation could help future exchange students. After the other humans left, the 3 roommates settled into their evening routine. As they prepared their sleeping area, Zareth made an observation that surprised Marcus. Your species shows remarkable adaptability, she told him. Most others we've encountered struggle more with accommodating unfamiliar social customs. What do you mean? Marcus asked. Well, Kath began thoughtfully, when this arrangement was suggested in my orientation meetings, the advisors warned that humans might find it too challenging. They said your species has very rigid boundaries around sleep and personal space. Marcus considered this. I guess we do tend to be pretty territorial about our bedrooms. But it seemed like a reasonable accommodation once I understood the need. That's what makes it remarkable, Zareth continued. You didn't just tolerate the arrangement, you genuinely adapted to it. You sleep better now, you've learned to interpret our color changes and sleep songs as comfort rather than disturbance, and you even intervene when one of us has restless sleep. Marcus realized she was right. Just the night before, he gently placed a hand on Keth's arm when his friend was experiencing what seemed like an unpleasant dream, causing Keth's skin to shift from dark purple back to peaceful gold. I didn't realize I was doing that, Marcus said. It's instinctive communal behavior, Keth explained. You've developed responsive social sleeping patterns that most humans don't possess. It's quite extraordinary. As they settled into their beds, Marcus found himself thinking about adaptation and cultural exchange. He'd come to Kepler Station expecting to learn about alien technologies and scientific methods, but instead he was discovering things about his own capacity for change and connection. The next few weeks passed smoothly. Word of their successful arrangement spread through the exchange student community, and Marcus found himself fielding questions from other humans about cross-species living situations. Some were dealing with their own cultural accommodation challenges, and Marcus was happy to share what he'd learned about patience, communication, and open-mindedness. More significantly, other species began approaching him with questions about human social flexibility. Apparently, his willingness to adapt to Zephyrian customs had surprised many of the alien students and faculty. Most humans we've encountered are rigid about personal boundaries, explained Dr. Yathera, a crystalline being who taught xenosociology. Your case suggests greater adaptability than our cultural profiles indicated. Maybe our profiles are incomplete, Marcus suggested during an impromptu interview for her research. We've never had the opportunity to test human adaptability in truly alien social contexts before. The galactic community is still new to us. Dr. Yathera's crystalline structure hummed with what Marcus had learned indicated interest. You believe humans as a species are more flexible than previously observed? I think we're all still learning about each other, Marcus replied diplomatically. But, yes, I think humans might surprise you. This conversation led to an unexpected invitation. Dr. Yathera was organizing a conference on interspecies social accommodation, and she asked Marcus to present his experience as a case study. The conference would include representatives from dozens of species, many of whom had limited contact with humans. I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak for all of humanity, Marcus protested. You're not speaking for all humans, Dr. Yathera clarified. You're sharing a specific example of successful adaptation. But, your case has implications for how we understand human social evolution and potential for galactic integration. After discussing it with Keth and Zareth, Marcus agreed to participate. His presentation was scheduled for the final day of the semester, just before students departed for intersession break. Preparing for the presentation meant documenting their arrangement in detail. With Keth and Zareth's help, Marcus recorded data about sleep quality improvements, stress reduction measures, and cross-cultural learning outcomes. What emerged was a compelling picture of mutual benefit and adaptation. The conference day arrived with Marcus feeling unexpectedly nervous. The audience included representatives from 23 different species, many of whom had never interacted closely with humans. Marcus stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of alien faces, and began his presentation. When I first arrived at Kepler Station, he started, I thought cultural exchange meant learning about alien technologies and scientific methods. I expected to observe and study, not to fundamentally change my own behavior patterns. He described the initial arrangement with Keth, the gradual adaptation process, and the expansion to include Zareth. He shared data about improved sleep quality and stress reduction for all three participants. Most importantly, he discussed what he'd learned about the difference between tolerance and true adaptation. Tolerance means putting up with differences, Marcus explained. Adaptation means changing yourself to accommodate those differences in ways that benefit everyone involved. True cultural exchange requires adaptation, not just tolerance. During the question period that followed, Marcus was struck by the thoughtfulness of the queries. Species after species shared their own challenges with interspecies accommodation and expressed interest in applying similar principles to their situations. a representative of the Andromedans, whose crystalline matrix normally resonated at frequencies painful to most other species, asked about the possibility of modulation techniques that might allow for closer contact with other beings. A gaseous entity from the Nebula Collective inquired about whether their environmental containment suits could be modified to allow for more natural social interaction. Marcus realized that his simple arrangement with Keth and Zareth had opened a discussion about broader possibilities for interspecies cooperation and understanding. After the presentation, Dr. Yathara approached him with several colleagues. "Your case study will be referenced in our policy recommendations to the Galactic Council," she informed him. "It provides evidence that close interspecies accommodation is not only possible but potentially beneficial for all participants." "What kind of policy recommendations?" Marcus asked. "Previously, housing policies for exchange students prioritized species separation to avoid cultural conflicts," explained Dr. Yathara. "Your success suggests that careful cross-species matching might actually enhance the exchange experience." As the conference concluded, Marcus felt a sense of pride that extended beyond personal accomplishment. He'd somehow become an example of humanity's potential for galactic integration, and that felt like an enormous responsibility. That evening, back in their quarters, the three friends celebrated with a special meal prepared by Zareth. As they ate, they reflected on how much had changed since that first awkward conversation about sleep arrangements. "I've learned as much from this arrangement as from all my classes combined," Marcus admitted. "Not just about Zephyrian culture, but about my own assumptions and limitations." "The learning has been mutual," Keth assured him. "We've gained insights into human social capacity that will inform our understanding of your species for generations. More than that," Zareth added, "we've demonstrated that meaningful cross-species bonds are possible. Not just cooperation or coexistence, but genuine friendship and mutual care." As they prepared for their final sleep-sharing session before intersession break, Marcus felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Tomorrow, Zareth would return to her family's dwelling for the break, and Keth would visit cousins in another sector of the station. Marcus himself would return to Earth for a brief visit home. "Will we continue this arrangement next semester?" Marcus asked as they settled into their beds. "If you're willing," Keth replied hopefully. "I've requested that we remain roommates for the rest of my time here." "I'd like that," Marcus said. "Though I should warn you, I might want to invite some other humans to observe our arrangement. There's been a lot of interest in replicating this model." "Cultural ambassadors," Zareth said with satisfaction. "I approve." As Marcus drifted off to sleep for the last time in their shared arrangement of the semester, he listened to Keth's gentle breathing and watched the soft color changes that indicated peaceful dreams. He thought about how something as simple as sharing sleep space had become a bridge between species, a demonstration of humanity's potential for adaptation and connection. In the morning, they would part ways temporarily, but Marcus knew they'd created something significant together. They'd proven that meaningful interspecies relationships were possible, that humans could adapt to alien social customs without losing their own identity, and that true cultural exchange could benefit everyone involved. More importantly, they'd shown that the galaxy might be more connected and cooperative than anyone had previously imagined. All it required was the willingness to try something new, to move beyond tolerance toward genuine adaptation and understanding. As Marcus's consciousness faded into sleep, Keth's soft dream song providing a familiar melody, he smiled with the knowledge that they were pioneers of a new kind of galactic community, one built not just on trade and treaties, but on personal connection and mutual care. The future of human-alien relations, he realized, might be as simple and as profound as learning to sleep together.